Hello. Welcome to 2026. No matter when you're seeing this, whether it is still early in the year or a bit later, I just want to wish everyone a blessed 2026 and may all your hopes and dreams, your ideas, your desires, those things that are good, of good report, above board, of course, and legal, that those desires of your heart are met and that you get to become that person that you long to be, or that you start on that journey of transformation and change. And for those of you who have seen my platforms before, you would know that I talk a lot about change, I talk a lot about transformation, both at the level of relationships, well, that's what I'm most known for, and also at the personal level. And for those who may not know, I am Denise J. Charles. And just let me introduce myself to you. I am an educator and an author. I am trained in leadership. I'm trained in counseling and people development. And I'm really passionate about helping us all to not just change and become the best version of ourselves. I know that has become quite a trite and cliche statement, but to really help us to be all that God intends us to be. We are all created for a purpose, with a purpose in mind. The scriptures, which I hold dear to my heart, they say that I knew you, I formed you, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. And that speaks to the fact that none of us is here by mistake, no matter how we got here. None of us is here by mistake. There's a purpose, there's a plan, there's a destiny wrapped up in us. And deep in the recesses of our hearts and in our minds, those of us who think deeply and think about our life's trajectory, whether you are a young person, a middle-aged person, or a more senior person, no matter where you're located, those of us who spend some time thinking, we know that we were made for more. And we know that there's a lot in us to be on earth still. And no matter what stage you're at or what age you're at, never stop growing. I am one who loves to embrace change. I love to embrace development in every facet of my life. I've done a lot of training in the area of education because that's my primary profession. I'm an education. I'm involved in educational leadership, and my experience in education is vast and wide, and it influences, I guess, a lot of what I do because I always see myself as a consummate teacher. And even though I'm not necessarily teaching in that way anymore, I embrace that mantle of being able to cause us all to think, because if I don't challenge myself to think, I can't challenge you to think. And I never want to come across as being a know-it-all or as someone who's talking down to anyone, because that's not where I'm coming from at all. I fully embrace all of my flaws and my foibles and all the things that I still need to change about myself, all the areas in which I still need to grow. I embrace those things, those that I'm aware of and those that I'm not so aware of. And it's important to have that posture where we are always willing to learn and always willing to grow and always willing to change and be who we can be and who God wants us to be. And that's my heart posture. And it's my prayer for you as well, that this posture will locate you if that's not where you're at. And if you're at that point in your life, that you will allow it to be a vehicle for change and transformation in an ongoing developmental way, because life is a journey. So I said a little bit about myself for those who may not know who I am. Some of you may see me on various platforms, on TikTok, etc., but you may not know the sum total of all that I do. But I'm not necessarily going to bore you with going into all those details, but I've done quite a lot in the area of relationship education since 2008. My husband and I founded a charity in Barbados called Better Blends Relationship Institute. And it is from that platform that we have done so many of the things that we have done, whether it's been speaking to groups, speaking at seminars, wedding seminars, preparing people for marriage, countless couples we counsel, individuals that we counsel, not just in terms of marriage preparation, but in terms of relationship challenges and some with respect to life development as well. We've done lots of seminars at churches and for other groups. And of course, I may be well known for my writing. I've had a blog for several years. It is still there. It is not as active as when I first started it, but certainly there are, I am sure, hundreds of articles, over 100 articles on my blog about a range of relationship issues that you can still locate at lovestory246 at wordpress.com. And if you Google my name, Denise J. Charles, remember the J, or Dr. Denise J. Charles, you'll find a lot of the articles that I've written over the years on relationships, or you may see some of my videos that are around on YouTube and on TikTok and on IG, etc. And my husband Gabriel, have been married. We've been married for 41 years. We have 3 wonderful sons and very creative. We are a very creative family, the Charles family. And my husband and I do have a podcast called Strong Love Speaks. And a new season of that will be starting very soon. But this is something that I'm embarking on all on my own. And because I felt led to do it. I felt coming from my background of faith and trust in God and reliance on His leadership, I really feel very strongly that this is something that I must do. And it's called the Butterfly Chronicles. And we all know that butterflies emerge from caterpillars. They're not always butterflies. There's a cycle that allows them to move from caterpillar to butterfly. And this imagery of the change that a caterpillar goes through to become a butterfly is something that became cemented in my spirit several years ago. And in 2019, I published a book called Tonight, I Am a Butterfly, Celebrating Seasons of Change. And I think I would have been reached out to by a good set of women who've told me that this book was really life-changing and that it impacted their lives. And I've given away a lot of the books. I've sold many of them. I just have literally just a few copies left. And I plan to have it available on Amazon very soon. It's available as an ebook, but I plan to have it available as a print copy very, very soon, just to let you see what it looks like for those who may not know. Tonight, I Am a Butterfly, Celebrating Seasons of Change. You're probably seeing it in every verse, but this is the book. All designed by one of my sons, the graphic designer, Sergio Jeremiah, for those who may not know. And it's a book of 61 readings, inspirational readings, and many of those readings, in spite of the fact that I wrote them, or they emerged from my spirit, they challenge me, and they still challenge me. I still go back to them from time to time. I remember I created a series last year in 2025 called 21 Days of Purpose, I think that's what it was. Why am I not remembering the name of it? But it was, I used 21 of the readings and I created small posts about them, each of them, and I posted them, consecutively for the most part, over a period of time early in the year, last year. And this idea of doing the Butterfly Chronicles, one of the readings is actually called the Butterfly Chronicles, by the way, came to me, I think, sometime last year, because I felt that the book hadn't been rinsed out enough. There's a lot in this book, and it is not that every episode I will bring to you will be from the book, but I know a lot of what I've written in the book will influence the things that we talk about today and going forward. So this is just a brief intro to the Butterfly Chronicles, and it's not going to be long and drawn out. I'll try to keep the episodes brief because I don't want to tire you with listening to something that is long and drawn out, but I want that I hit the nail on the head in terms of the topic that I've chosen for the particular day. And the topic I'm going to talk to you about now it comes in the form of a question, and this one does not appear as a reading in my book, but it is influenced by things that I have written, okay? And the thing about knowledge is it occurs in layers. So you may write something today, or I write poetry as well. I'm a poet as well. You write poetry and you go back to it and then you change a line, you change a how the words are, the line is punctuated, or you add, and then there's another layer. Or you've written it out of a particular experience or observation that you've had, and others read it and they see something fresh, totally different to what you intended. And there's nothing wrong with that. I also studied literatures in English. That's my first degree. So I love reading. I love literature. I'm actually in my office where I have books on either side. You can't see, but I have books on either side, and they're just a smidgen of the books that I own in this house. I have so many books, because I love learning, I love knowledge, and what I'm trying to say is that we may present an idea and we come back to it and we see another layer, and that is how I want to treat to these episodes. I may speak about some things I've spoken about before, or I may bring new light and fresh light to things that I'm now seeing for the first time. And the same thing happens when we read our Bibles, for those of you who read the Bible. You can read a particular scripture and you see one thing, and that's true and real, and you come back to it several weeks or months or even years later, or maybe you hear someone expound on it, and it's like a totally different insight, a deeper insight, another layer that you never saw before. So this particular reading is not included in my book as a reading by this name, but the idea is certainly perhaps there. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So I'm asking you a question. Who or what is your change manager? Who or what is your change manager? That might sound like a strange question. But we live in an era in this 21st century where there's a lot of talk about change and transformation. I mean, it's not just at the personal level, it's at the political level, it's at the organizational level, it's at the level of society, where we talk about the need for change and how we see family and how we see each other. We live with people, we interface with people daily, and we are constantly hearing the social scientists and the sociologists and the psychologists and the doctors and the pastors and political leaders saying basically all the same thing. We need to learn how to get along with each other. We need to learn how to be able to resolve conflict without getting into a fight or getting violent. And we need to treat each other with respect. We need to treat people the way we want to be treated. So we're hearing a lot about the need for change and transformation in terms of how we see our nation, in terms of how we see how we fit into the world, and how we should allow the world to impact us while at the same time impacting the world. Because we always hear we live in a global environment. The world has changed. Globalization has more or less flattened the world or the earth, and we can get in contact with people no matter where they are so quickly, through our cell phones and so on. Life has changed a lot from how it was when I was a young child or even a teenager and even a young married woman. Life has changed a lot. But in spite of that, I think one thing that we can all perhaps agree with is that need that man has to always change and improve is not new. If you read the philosophers and you read the early writers of the various centuries coming right through to now, you would see it as a recurring theme in human development. Mankind always sees the need for change and for improvement. And that's because the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. And while God remains constant and he has no need to change, we understand that because we are made in his image and likeness and we fall far from who he is, then that desire to improve is inherent in the human psyche, even in those who may not believe in God or may not be practicing any particular spiritual walk or living a life of faith or are Christians or anything like that. So I'm saying all that to say, you want to change, right? You want to be transformed. You want to develop yourself. You want to become better. You want to improve. But who is managing that process for you? Who or what? Because it could be a what as well. Now, because of my studies and even in terms of my job, I have seen a lot of engagement with respect to the question of change management. I remember when I did my doctoral degree, which is in education, I would have done a course on change management. And I know the whole question of managing change is one that is pretty relevant when we look at the need for our societies to evolve, even as we hold dear the things that are still that should be held constant, the things that are valuable, the things that transcend environments, that transcend nations, that transcend ethnicities, that transcend social groups, etc. There is that need to evolve while still holding near to certain traditional beliefs and values. And I think, particularly for us in the Caribbean, who have come out of a colonial past, we were colonized by the British for the most part in the Anglophone Caribbean. We were colonized by the British, and a lot of our practices and even the way we may have dressed and a lot of things that we believed were grounded in that colonial influence. And we have come full circle, and many of us now, while we appreciate that the colonial experience is a part of the Caribbean experience and it has shaped our life, it has shaped some of the foods we eat, it has shaped our education system, it has shaped a lot of our, even the names of the places that we live in Barbados and in the wider Caribbean are very British or British influence. And for those who are in other countries colonized by the French, you would have the use of French words or patois, broken French and so on. So we have these influences, and we have our African influences. I'm a Black woman and I love being Black. I love asserting my Blackness. I came to a cognizance of really being a Black woman through a series of experiences. So you might say, oh, you came to a cognizance of being a Black woman. You were born Black. Yes, I was and was born Black. I'm Black. But when you live in a predominantly Black society and raised in the time where I went to school in the 70s and the 80s, there wasn't that much talk about Blackness as an identity because we were predominantly Black, and as far as we know, we just experienced life. But it's only as I went into secondary school and I saw other ethnic groups and how they were treated differently to how we as Blacks were treated, that I began to understand what Blackness meant, right? And that's a whole other discussion we can have at another time. But I came into a greater awareness of being a Black woman and all that meant. I went natural with my hair. I wore locks for 23 years. I just cut them last year. Is that right? I cut them in 2024. I cut them at the end of 2024, I think. Yeah. And still love natural hair for the most part. Yes, I will use different colors, but I love my natural texture. And I'm saying all of this to say that we must always have that awareness of a need to evolve. And as a Caribbean Black woman, I understand the need for us to always evolve and change. And that's at the personal level. And at the organizational level, we recognize the need to evolve and change as well, because we live in a different world. I think that's where I got into that discussion, because we're in a globalized environment, but we want to be global citizens, but yet we want to preserve our Caribbean identity or our Barbadian identity. So we don't want to become lost in the digital space or in the global space where we lose who we are. So all of that is really about change and evolution in terms of how we see ourselves. Our faith and who we believe God is and who God can be in our lives. Many of us were raised in church, but our Christianity was couched in a lot of rigidity, a list of do's and don'ts, and a lot of fear. And we almost saw God as a big bad God and somebody who was always angry with us and distant. And we have had to walk the walk of evolution in terms of understanding yet that yes, God is a righteous God and He does stand for righteousness. He does not like sin, but He's also so loving and supportive, not of our sin, not of our decadence, not of our failing, but supportive of us in our imperfection, because we can never be perfect. We can never be good enough for God. The Bible says it. Our righteousness is like filthy rags. So you can't be good enough for God. You can't do enough good works for God. Your Your relationship with God is not based on what you do, but on who you become because of His grace and because of His love, because of His compassion towards us. And that in itself is an evolution that many of us who've been raised in traditional evangelical churches had to walk in terms of understanding who God is and who He desires to be in our lives. But at the organizational level, at the systemic institutional level, at the political level, we all recognize the need for change, the need for development. But who really is managing that change? And that's the question I asked. That's the topic of this particular episode. And as I began by saying, I've been exposed to change management in organizations, and I know that there's a lot that is done, a lot of workshops, a lot of conferences, a lot of papers, a lot of sessions with groups within the organization to try to understand where people are at, why they resist change, what they're afraid of, assuring people that their needs will always be met no matter the organization is changing or the structures are changing. They're not going to be forgotten, they're not going to be left behind. These are the areas that we will try to make life better for you in this work environment. Never mind this is changing or that is changing, or the name has changed, or the manager has changed, or we're developing a different philosophy. These are the things that we won't change, and you will always be remembered, and you will always be. We get a lot of that, and there's structures that are put in place to manage change processes. But I have been around long enough to see with my own eyes that even though we try so hard to put processes and systems, and we talk a lot of nice sounding talk to make people feel that even though there's change, we're going to hold on to the things that are of value, and we are going to look after you as a member of this organization, or of a member of this institution, or as a member of this nation. We're going to ensure that your needs are continuously met. We know that change is often regarded with suspicion, by those to whom the change is being preached. And very often, people lose trust and lose faith in those who are spouting the ideas of change. And even though a lot of good is done to help foster change in groups or in organizations, in churches, in workplaces, in countries, we know that very often that change does not materialize across the board because it is hard for people to change. A building or a structure is not the organization. The organization is the people. And if you really want change to happen in any organization or in any institution, you have to change the people. So change is not just some abstract institutional or organizational construct. It boils down to the hearts of individuals changing so that their behavior will change. And all of us start the year with lots of good resolutions. We write them down, we tick them off. We have a to-do list, the things that we want to focus on in the first quarter or the second quarter, the third quarter. Some might do it by month, some might do it monthly, by week. Or we just have very broad goals, dreams, as I said at the beginning, that we want to see fulfilled and we want to see changed. But then when the rubber meets the road, as we live life and life happens, we recognize that a lot of those things that we set out to do don't happen. And sometimes it is because our mindset has not changed, our thinking has not changed, our feelings about our ability to do certain things have not really changed, even though we have noted the things that we want to change. And the same thing happens in organizations, that happens with the individual. And what happens in organizations happens because it happens with the individuals. So when I ask you who is managing change, your change, an organization may have a change manager, somebody who's very well skilled, who've studied, who's an expert in the field. And even they, as change managers, have a lot of problems, have a lot of challenges seeing change actualized in organizations. So when it comes to us as individuals, are we the ones managing our own change? And is that why we keep failing? Because we are stuck. And if we're stuck, it's going to be very difficult to see the change that we want to see in our own lives. And that's the idea that I want to really resonate with you in all that I've said. A lot of people talk today about, yeah, I'm worthy, I am good, I'm this. A lot of positive affirmations, and nothing wrong with positive affirmations. But if we're all that, why is it that we are so limited? And why is it that we don't seem to get a grasp or a grip of the things that we really want to do, or why we don't actually see the things that we have spoken come to pass, or even that others have spoken to us come to pass? And I want to suggest that it is all well and good to be confident. It is well and good to have plans, and I'm a bit of a planner. I straddle in the middle. I am a planner, but I'm also very spontaneous. So I could plan something from last year or from last month or last week and say, well, this is when I want to accomplish it or achieve it. And I will work towards it. Sometimes I get through, sometimes I don't, sometimes I need more time. But then I can also act on spontaneity and do something this week that I have never planned that I was going to do. So I straddle in the middle of being a planner and being spontaneous, right? And what I've recognized is that in spite of the fact that we can plan so well, because we are totally self-reliant and we're living in a world that is very self and me oriented. I call it the age of the selfie. I actually have an article in here as well by that name. We are living in the age of self. There's a selfie culture. We have selfies from the phone. That's where the word was tagged. And there's a lot of focus on me and myself and at all costs. And I want to suggest to you that you didn't make yourself. That scripture that says, I knew you, I formed you, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. That speaks to the idea of destiny, that our lives are not a mistake, and that our abilities, our talents, the things that we feel passionate about, that we feel strong about, they are things that really God has invested in us and He's blessed us with, so that our lives can impact the lives of others. Our lives can impact our society. And if that's what we are designed for in various spheres, because everybody's not in the same area, we're diverse. But however your life was designed, and whoever your life or whatever your life was designed to impact, and you see the need for change in you, and I say this for myself, let me put it for myself, because I don't want to seem as if I'm preaching down to anyone. I cannot fulfill all the things that my life is intended to unless I rely on God as my manager. And as I said, there's a lot of self-reliance and a lot of self-reliance literature out there. And I'm not saying that we mustn't know what we want to accomplish and that we shouldn't plan, or don't get me wrong. But after all of that has been done, I think we are required to understand our limitations, understand that we are not infinite, we are not omniscient, we don't know everything. And when we have that heart posture of humility, then we can rely on God to make the pathways plain for us, and to strengthen us, and to build us up, and to develop us, and to help us to see beyond ourselves. And that comes not only through cultivating a lifestyle of prayer and reflection, reading the Word of God, reading other quality books that could help us, because there are several quality books that I have read over the years that have made me into the woman that I am today. And I always speak about this one. I've spoken about this particular one called Healing for Damaged Emotions by David Seamands and Healing of Memories. Those were two powerful books written by a man. And I think those books completely revolutionized my life, along with reading the Bible, yes, but those two books had a significant impact on my emotional healing. And that is when I was perhaps reading those books when I may have been in my 20s or my early 30s. But those books had a significant impact on me, being who I am today. Not the only books, but there are two of them that I always speak to. And when we're talking about who or what is managing us, are we allowing the opinions of others to manage us? Are we being managed by what is out here on social media? Are we being managed by an image or a trend? Are we allowing trends to make us think we have to dump this thing today and get this thing tomorrow? We have to make our home look a particular way, or we have to style ourselves in a particular way just because it's a trend. Now, there may be some of us who are trendy because that's just our personalities. We like to change up a lot. So we will change hairstyles, we will change hair colors, we will change decor because that's a part of our personality, and that's fine. So I'm not saying it is wrong to be trendy. What I'm saying is that don't allow trends to make you feel inferior. Don't allow trends to make you feel that you are lacking something, or that you're only valuable because of your external appearance. As much as I love dressing up and looking different, I am always talking to myself because I must understand that I am not what I look like. I love to look good, I love to dress, but I am not what I look like. I am not my education. I value education. I love the fact that I have done well in terms of studying. We're not to be proud, but I am pleased with my accomplishments. I worked very, very hard, particularly with my last degree, my doctorate. I graduated, I would say, at the top of the class, if you can do that with a doctorate. In the university that I did, which is University of the West Indies, I received high commendation. I got all A's. I did an excellent, based on my grades, research thesis, etc. So I am glad to know that I have put in work and I have seen results. I've written 4 books so far. I'm working on 1.5 with other ideas in mind, for other things that I want to do, writing projects. So I am all for accomplishment. I am all for going after goals and, wanting to rise to the top in your profession, or wanting to do better, not being satisfied with being at one level, but wanting to change, wanting to develop, wanting to grow. I love that. And I connect well with people who are like that because that's how I am. I know not everybody's the same way. Some people will be in one job for 30, 40 years and be quite content, and that's okay if that's who you are. That's quite all right if that's who you are. That's not who I am. And we have to understand who we are and not allow ourselves to feel inferior, marginalized, downtrodden by anyone who would suggest that we should be exactly like they are, or that there's something wrong with us because, oh, you're ambitious, so there's something wrong with you. Who do you think you are? Or why is it that you want to write all these books? Or why is it that you want to own your own business? Or why is it that you change jobs so often? Why is it that you have moved from one church to the next? Why couldn't you just stay at the church that you got baptized in or that you became a Christian in? Why did you have to move? And why do you want to start your own ministry? Or why do you want to lead this project? There are people that would almost accuse us because we're not like them. We are not settled and just willing to just let things flow. We have a different trajectory for our lives. And we have to understand that we have to embrace who we are in terms of our personality, quirks and all, but at the same time, be able to look at ourselves and ask God to reveal to us the things about ourselves that we do need to change, the areas in our lives where we do need to grow, not allow ourselves to be, as I said, shaped and managed by external influences to the point where we lose sight of who we are because everybody looks like that, so that means I have to look like that, or everybody is doing this particular thing, so I have to do it. I remember when vision boarding became very popular, and I was not attracted to doing it or leading any vision boarding session because I don't just want to hop on a trend because everybody's doing vision boards. I start to do vision boards. Nothing wrong with vision boarding, nothing wrong with it. If you've done it or if you've been a part of a vision boarding group, excellent, and kudos to you. Not talking it down. I'm just saying I was not desirous of hopping on the trend because everybody was doing it. And so when you decide to to change or to develop in any particular area of your life or to move forward, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And there are going to be some things that are going to attempt to come against you to kind of pull you back and stop you from moving through that process of transformation. And one of those critical areas is self-doubt. And this is coming from one of my readings, which I am pulling a bit from, and that's why I'm glancing down, right? Because the name of this particular reading, remember today's topic or today's episode is who or what is your change manager? Who is managing your change, or what is managing your change? Are you allowing people, circumstances, trends, social media to manage your change? That is as critical a question as the question of what is stopping you from changing. And one of the things that can stop us is doubting ourselves or doubting who we know deep in our hearts or deep in our spirits we are meant to be. There's a question that is always bandied about there in academia and in other areas. Are leaders born or are they made? I've heard that question before. And I always say the answer is there's a bit of both. There's a bit of truth in both sides. I believe that leaders are made in that you can learn leadership. You can be taught to be a good leader. You can embrace the attributes of a good leader. And leadership can become a trajectory, a journey for you where you change and you become a better and a better and a better leader. But I also believe that there are some people who are born leaders. There are people who are born with the proclivity to lead. They want to lead, and they sort of lead naturally from childhood, and you see it coming up in very many areas of their lives. And you can't tell them they're not a leader, even if they don't have the title, But then there are those who may seek to put doubt in your mind. Say, but you don't have the title of leader. There's no directorship. There's nothing that you're overseeing at your workplace, or there's nothing that you're overseeing at your church, so how could you be a leader? But you can be a leader in your community. You can lead a cause. You can be an advocate for a particular thing because you feel passionate about that thing. Now, I've always felt passionate about family and about marriage and about life with children and raising your children right. And those things always occupied my mind. I wanted to have 7 children, believe it or not. I wanted to have 7 children, both my husband and I. That's what we said in our early years. Well, before we got married, we wanted 7. And then when we got married, I think we said we wanted 5. And we stopped at 3. And to this day, I regret stopping at 3. I wish I had had an additional 2 children or so. So I've always had this thing for family and for marriage and love. And I don't know where it came from. I just always was interested in it. I was always interested in it from my teenage years. And coming up, I got married young. I got married at 19. So coming up in my marriage, we would be attracted to reading. We did a lot of reading before we got married. We prepared ourselves for marriage through reading. Premarital counseling was popular in the 80s when we got married. We got married in 84. But we did a lot of reading and preparation. We listened to a lot of broadcasts that would help us to understand marriage and understand family life. We used to subscribe to magazines. That time magazines was a thing, I bought a lot of books. I have so many books that I bought through the years about marriage and relationships. We used to attend a couples group, and I would always offer insights. And I was quite young, in my 20s, and people would remark and say things like, "Wait, how you know that?" Or they would marvel at my perspective because I was a very young person. But I always had that proclivity and that inclination to study and understand marriage and family and so on, right? So I did some psychology at the master's level where I would have been exposed to human growth and development and personality theory and those things. Even though I did it at the level of education, I still was exposed to it, and I think it helped spark my interest more in understanding people and understanding why we do the things we do and why we behave the way that we do, etc. But I'm saying all of that to say, regardless of what your title is, the thing that you feel passionate about, the thing that you feel called to do, you are a leader in that area. And do not allow anyone or any lack of a title to make you feel otherwise. Live your passion. Go after it. You know, allow God and that sense of purpose to manage that change that you need to have so that you can be that person that you know you are destined to be, that you are called to be. Sometimes family and friends can seek to derail us by speaking negative words over our lives or trying to shortchange or marginalize us and make us think that we are not all of that, you know? But really and truly, we are meant to be more. And don't allow the words of people who say they are your friends or acquaintances, work colleagues, anyone, family even, close people, even your spouse, to cause you to draw back or hold back from what is inside of you. So who is managing your change, or what is managing your change? Don't let it be friends and family. Don't let it be the words of others. You know, the negative words of others. Sometimes we fear failure as much as we fear success. You know, we don't want to step on a limb and do something because we feel that if we do it, we may fail. And if we fail, that means that something is wrong with us. And, you know, it scares us into keeping quiet and keeping silent. And we don't walk through that journey of change because we fear that we might fail at that thing that we are going after. And similarly, we may fear success because we may feel, well, suppose this thing actually works, suppose this project or this idea blows up, how am I going to continue to manage it? How am I going to, this is going to change my life, this is going to change the things I'm able to do or how I live my life. I'm going to have to sacrifice so much to sustain this, you know. And because you fear success, you never step out. You know, who or what is managing your change? And let's not embrace the idea that everything about our lives will be perfect, or that we become trapped in this success ideal that we're going to just walk through everything in life, you know, at the top of our game, and we're going to succeed in everything. Life is not like that. Life is a series of undulations, movements that go up and go down, that go sideways, that goes, you know, movements that go in circles. You know, life is haphazard. I call it haphazard. You know, it's a tapestry of various experiences, good, bad, challenging, negative, positive. But what are we going to pull from those experiences? How are we going to allow those experiences to shape us and make us better and move us forward on our trajectory towards change, towards evolution, towards transformation? I want to leave this with you. Who or what is managing your change? Allow God to manage you. Allow Him to manage you. You know, the word says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. That's another saying in the word. And there's another one that says, trust in the Lord and He will give you the desires of your heart. And ultimately, our lives are not our own, and we must rely on God to direct our paths, to make our paths straight, the crooked paths straight, to set us on a firm foundation, a firm rock. So we become dependent on Him. He empowers us. He gives us great ideas. But all that we have, all that I am today and all that I have accomplished, I attribute to God. Because He's the one who has invested His gifts, His talents, His abilities, the ideas that I have, every project, things that I've walked through, things that I've done, both at my workplace and in my private life. They're ideas I believe that I've been given by God. That's how I see my life. I don't compartmentalize my life. God is in all that I do. I want Him to be in all that I do. And I strive every day to submit to His management. And it's a journey, because there are times when we just want to do life on our own. But that's not what God wants. You know, He wants to direct. But we have to be willing, you know. So I just want to encourage you today. Don't allow external influences to be your change manager. Do not allow the negative words or the negative voices of people, of influencers, of things that are happening around you in your society or your nation to manage you. Be purposeful, plan, yes, but yield and submit those plans to God and depend totally on Him for your butterfly journey. I'm Denise J. Charles. Thank you for joining me for Butterfly Chronicles, and I'll see you next time. Bye.